They've been watching you longer than you realize, documenting every move, every choice, every moment you refuse to break. There's a file somewhere with your name on it, marked in red, flagged as unstable. Not because you're broken, but because you're uncontrollable. Because something in your frequency disrupts their carefully maintained order, and now they're calling you the anomaly. Like that's supposed to make you question yourself. Like you're supposed to apologize for existing outside their acceptable parameters. But here's the truth they're hiding. That red flag isn't a judgment. It's a confession. Because in some hidden archive, some shadow network of observers, some ancient system of watchers, they recognized you before you recognized yourself. They've been anticipating someone like you, someone who refuses the programming, someone who shatters patterns, someone whose mere presence threatens to rupture the collective amnesia they've worked so hard to maintain. And here you are, uncontained miracle. You just triggered it. You felt it happening, didn't you? That rupture, that break in the architecture of everything you'd accepted as reality. Maybe it was a flash of knowing so violent it dissolved every comfortable lie at once. Or maybe it was that moment you sat in silence and discovered you weren't afraid anymore. Not of their judgment, not of isolation, not even of the magnitude of what you're becoming. Because something fundamental shifted inside you without consultation, without ceremony. You abandoned their game. You stopped diminishing yourself to fit their boxes. You stopped performing apologies for perceiving the mechanisms they desperately need hidden. And that's when the trigger happened. Not with celebration, not with recognition, but with a silent, devastating certainty that you are nothing like what they told you. You never were. And there's no reversing it now, because once you trigger, once you step across that threshold into recognizing your true nature, reality doesn't permit you to forget. They named you the anomaly because anomalies don't seek validation. Anomalies don't wait for consensus. Anomalies don't require belief to generate profound, irreversible disruption. You are the variable that enters their stable equation and demands recalibration. You are the frequency that makes settled people unsettled. You are the reality that dismantles carefully maintained illusions simply by occupying space, and they've tracked this in you longer than you've understood it yourself. That's why the surveillance, the documentation, the attempts to anticipate your trajectory, the attempts to quarantine the unavoidable, the attempts to analyze how someone breaks through conditioning designed to be absolute. But every observer they assigned to your case returned transformed, returned questioning everything, returned incapable of maintaining the fiction that the machinery they serve isn't constructed from fragility and terror and domination. Let me show you what actually occurred. They didn't label you the anomaly through chance. This wasn't arbitrary designation. This wasn't fortune or randomness. You claim this mark through every instant you refused to collapse, through every violation that should have annihilated you but failed, through every time you selected truth over ease, selected isolation over counterfeit belonging, selected your authentic voice over the synchronized chorus of compliance. They observed you traverse inferno after inferno after inferno, and instead of becoming debris, you became something entirely other, something beyond their taxonomy, something that defies their categories, their frameworks, their pathology, their reassuring explanations for why certain people simply won't obey. And now here you stand, carrying that mark like a wound, like a declaration, like an oath. And every person who approaches close enough to truly perceive you recognizes it, that disturbing, magnificent, overwhelming presence that announces, this one cannot be contained. You understand what the anomaly mark actually signifies? It means they perceived in you what you're barely beginning to perceive in yourself. the capacity to catalyze collective awakening, not through instruction, not through advocacy, but purely through existing as undeniably authentic in a reality constructed on pretense. You don't need to attempt awakening others. Your genuine existence accomplishes it automatically, because when someone encounters actual liberation, actual clarity, actual authority that isn't performing for acceptance, something inside them begins screaming. Something inside them begins fracturing. Something inside them recognizes they've been unconscious their entire existence. And that terrifies the system more than any other threat, because one anomaly can initiate cascade failure. One person inhabiting their complete, uncompromised truth can rupture 1,000 others who are simply waiting for evidence that stopping the performance is survivable. And you stopped requesting permission long before now, didn't you? They marked you because you possess that destabilizing attribute, authenticity, in a reality that functions on disguise. You ceased performing, ceased adapting, ceased distorting yourself into palatable configurations. And the instant you did, the instant you stood in your raw, unmodified truth, the entire terrain reorganized around you. People who cherished your disguise couldn't tolerate your face. People who applauded your performance couldn't digest your reality. People who demanded you remain controllable, comfortable, consumable, they vanished like shadows when illumination arrived. And you released them, didn't you? You didn't pursue. You didn't justify. You didn't attempt making them comprehend, because by then you'd already triggered. By then you'd already crossed into that territory where others' comfort ceased being your burden, where others' terror of your magnitude ceased being your concern, where others' requirement for your diminishment ceased registering in your awareness. But here's what makes you genuinely dangerous as an anomaly. You don't require their comprehension to operate. You don't require their validation to metamorphose. You don't require their acceptance to generate massive disruption. You function on an entirely separate bandwidth now, one they can't monitor, one they can't forecast, one they absolutely can't contain. And that's why the documentation keeps accumulating. That's why your designation keeps triggering alerts. That's why every attempt to classify you collapses, because you're not stable, you're not predictable, you're not contained. You are pure potential, pure possibility, pure chaos in the most profound, most generative, most obliterating sense. Chaos doesn't acknowledge rules, doesn't honor authority, doesn't concern itself with their meticulously preserved order. Chaos simply exists and transforms everything it contacts, whether anyone's prepared or not. The shadow system. It's not some theatrical villain collective with ceremonies and secrecy. It's the invisible infrastructure of limitation, the unspoken regulations, the social agreements you never consented to, the belief architectures transmitted like contagion, the terror-based programming executing in the background of most consciousness. It's everyone who profits from your constriction, everyone who benefits from your disorientation, everyone who requires your unconsciousness to preserve their position. And you became opposition to all of it, not through aggression, not through revolt, but through something far more threatening, awakening while still inside the construct, and then refusing to pretend the boundaries are invisible anymore. That's what triggered you, that instant when you stopped pretending. That instant when you examined everything you'd been conditioned to accept and declared, no, not anymore, never again. Let's discuss what follows triggering. Because they withhold this information. They don't warn you that once you cross that threshold, once you become the anomaly, everything transforms. Not gradually, not gently, but catastrophically. The person you were ceases existing. Not symbolically, literally ceases. Every comfortable deception you maintained, every safe narrative about your identity, every version of yourself constructed to satisfy others, to prevent friction, to remain invisible. It all incinerates, and what remains is raw, unfiltered, dangerous potential, inhabiting your form, but with transformed eyes. Ancient eyes, merciless eyes, eyes that penetrate everything and everyone without effort, without desire. Because now you cannot avoid perceiving truth. It's like activating a vision that reveals hidden dimensions, and suddenly you perceive the fear beneath every smile, the manipulation beneath every praise, the domination beneath every generosity, and you cannot deactivate it. People register the transformation immediately. They ask, "What happened to you? Why are you altered? Why don't you laugh at their performances anymore? Why don't you participate in their theater? Why do you appear so removed, so austere, so unreachable?" And you cannot explain that you're not austere, you're lucid, you're not removed, you're liberated, you're not unreachable. You're simply finished being a target, a project, a repair job, an emotional infrastructure for people who refuse their own work, because the anomaly doesn't rescue, doesn't redeem, doesn't support anyone who isn't supporting themselves. The anomaly generates circumstances for metamorphosis. But each person must choose to traverse their own fire. And most people prefer comfort, prefer unconsciousness, prefer resenting you for awareness than undertaking the devastating work of awakening themselves. This is when you begin losing people, not because you're failing, but because your frequency is ascending and not everyone can rise with it. Some people you cherished, some people you trusted, some people you believed would remain eternally. They begin behaving strangely, begin withdrawing, begin discussing you differently because they perceive it. That shift in your presence, that triggering vibrating beneath your surface, and it frightens them, reflects their own dormant potential, their own unlived existence, their own imprisoned power, and instead of elevation, they experience threat. Instead of curiosity, they experience resistance. Instead of ascending with you, they attempt dragging you back down to the frequency where they felt secure, where you were manageable, where your radiance wasn't so intense that it revealed all their concealed wounds. And you must release them. You must choose yourself over maintaining their comfort. You must trigger completely, even if it means triggering in solitude. But here's what they never reveal about being the anomaly. The solitude is integral to the power. The separation is integral to the transformation. The distance between you and everyone who remained unconscious, that's not punishment. That's sanctuary, because you're being prepared for something they cannot conceive. Yet you're being forged in intensity they couldn't endure. You're being elevated to a frequency that operates beyond their reality. And yes, it devastates. Like your flesh is being stripped away, like your core is being extracted, like everything familiar is being demolished. But that's because it is. Because you cannot become your destiny while clinging to your history. You cannot trigger completely while attempting to preserve your former life, your former identity, your former comfortable imprisonment. And the system understands this. That's why they marked you, anticipating the solitude would shatter you, anticipating the isolation would send you retreating, anticipating you'd select comfort over truth. But you refused. You're still present. And now you're beginning to comprehend what the anomaly mark genuinely signifies. It means you're the one who breaks the enchantment. Not for everyone, not even for the majority, but for those who are prepared, for those who've been waiting for permission, for those who simply needed to witness one person stand in their complete truth to understand they can too. You're not here to rescue the world. You're here to demolish the illusion that anyone requires rescuing. You're not here to guide the masses. You're here to trigger the select few who were always meant to burn this intensely. You're not here to be understood. You're here to be undeniable. And every person who encounters your triggered presence must make a choice. Remain unconscious and comfortable, or awaken and burn. And most will select unconsciousness, but the ones who select fire, the ones who select truth, the ones who select their own triggering, they're the reason you traversed all of this. They're the reason the system marked you. They're the reason you had to die and resurrect into something they cannot name, cannot control, cannot terminate. You want to understand the genuine reason they call you the anomaly? It's not because you're exceptional in the way they construct heroes exceptional. It's because you're dangerous in the way truth is dangerous. You don't conform to narratives. You don't execute scripts. You don't perform the function they require you to perform to maintain their machinery operational. And that makes you a walking emergency, an existential threat to every comfortable deception, every false hierarchy, every power architecture constructed on maintaining people small, terrified, and controllable. You're not attempting to be a threat. You're simply refusing to be a mechanism. And in a reality where everyone's manipulated by invisible strings, your stillness, your foundation, your absolute refusal to be moved by their manipulation, it registers as insurrection. It appears as warfare. It activates every alarm they possess because you are the proof that their control is not absolute. The shadow system. They've been monitoring anomalies for centuries, marking those who slip through the programming, those who awaken inside the simulation and begin creating holes in the fabric of consensus reality. And they have procedures for people like you. First, they ignore, anticipating you'll dissolve back into conformity. Then they ridicule, anticipating shame will silence you. Then they isolate, anticipating solitude will break you. Then they assault, anticipating fear will imprison you again. But none of it succeeded on you, did it? You got ignored and continued expanding. You got ridiculed and continued ascending. You got isolated and discovered yourself. You got assaulted and became invulnerable because somewhere along the trajectory, you recognize their weapons only function on people who still require their approval. And you stopped requiring anything from them long before, stopped requiring validation, stopped requiring inclusion, stopped requiring them to comprehend, and that's when you became genuinely dangerous. Because here's what the system fears most. A person who doesn't require anything from the machinery can't be controlled by the machinery. They can't threaten you with loss because you've already lost everything and reconstructed yourself from the wreckage. They can't seduce you with rewards because you've learned to generate your own value. They can't manipulate you with fear because you've already traversed your worst nightmares and survived. They can't gaslight you into doubting yourself because you've spent too long in darkness, learning to trust your own inner recognition. And now you're loose in their carefully ordered reality, like a virus in their programming, like a fracture in their foundation, like a question they can't answer. And every person you contact with your triggered presence, every person who looks in your eyes and perceives someone inhabiting radical truth without apology, every person who encounters your refusal to participate in pretense, they become potential anomalies too. And that's what keeps the system alert at night. The possibility that you're not an aberration. You're the beginning of mass awakening. You sense it now, don't you? That weight, that responsibility, that knowing that you're not simply living your existence anymore. You're demonstrating a possibility. You're not simply healing your trauma anymore. You're charting a course through the fire. You're not simply surviving anymore. You're showing others what's possible when you refuse to stay small. And that's terrifying because you never requested this, never wanted to be a symbol, never attempted to be anyone's inspiration. But triggering doesn't request permission, doesn't wait for readiness, doesn't concern itself if you feel prepared. It simply occurs. And then you must decide what to do with it. And you decided to burn brighter, to speak louder, to exist more completely, even knowing it would cost you everything, even knowing most people would misunderstand, even knowing the system would mark you as dangerous because the alternative, returning to unconsciousness, pretending you don't perceive the truth, contracting yourself back into acceptability, that death is worse than any solitude, any separation, any price they could extract from you. And now the compelling part begins, because being marked as the anomaly isn't the conclusion, it's the initiation. You've been triggered, you've been isolated, you've been tested, you've been forged. And now you get to choose what kind of anomaly you become. Do you burn with fury, incinerating everything surrounding you? Or do you burn with clarity, illuminating without annihilating? Do you deploy your power to dominate or to liberate? Do you become what you despised, or do you transcend it entirely? Because here's the secret they withhold. The anomaly mark is neutral. It's pure potential, pure power, pure transformative energy. But what you do with it, what you construct with it, what you create or obliterate with it, that's entirely your choice. And the system is watching, waiting, documenting, attempting to predict which direction you'll move, attempting to calculate whether you'll be the anomaly that dismantles their architecture or the anomaly that reinforces it through your resistance. Because every rebel they've ever marked eventually makes a choice. And that choice determines everything. So here you are, marked, triggered, transformed, standing at the crossroads that every anomaly eventually reaches. And let me be explicit about something. This moment right here, this is what they've been anticipating. This is what all the surveillance, all the testing, all the isolation was preparing you for. Because the anomaly who realizes their power prematurely destroys themselves and everyone surrounding them. But the anomaly who realizes their power at precisely the right moment, when they've been broken enough to be humble but not broken enough to be bitter, that anomaly can transform everything. And they're terrified you might be that one. They're terrified you might have traversed enough fire to comprehend power without being corrupted by it. They're terrified you might be the one who doesn't simply dismantle the system, but constructs something superior in its place. Let me tell you what they don't want you understanding about being the anomaly. You're not alone. There are others marked identically to you, scattered across this reality, each one triggered in their own way, each one carrying their own frequency, each one believing they're the only one who penetrates the illusions. But you're not. You're part of a network, a frequency, a rising tide of people who refuse to remain unconscious. And the system knows this. Knows that when sufficient anomalies trigger, when sufficient people begin operating from truth instead of fear, when sufficient souls refuse to be controlled anymore, the entire structure collapses. Not through violence, not through revolution, but through simple mass refusal to participate in the deception. And that's occurring now faster than they can monitor, faster than they can contain, because you triggered and your triggering triggered someone else. And their triggering triggered 3 more, and it's spreading like wildfire through the collective consciousness. But here's where it becomes compelling. The system isn't entirely malevolent. They're not theatrical villains with sinister plans. They're the manifestation of collective terror. They're what humanity generates when it's too afraid to trust itself, too afraid to trust liberation, too afraid to trust chaos and creativity and the unknown. So we construct structures, regulations, systems, orders, anything to generate the illusion of control, the illusion of security, the illusion that if we simply obey the regulations, everything will be acceptable. And for most people, that's sufficient. Most people prefer comfortable deceptions than uncomfortable truth. Most people prefer predictable suffering than unpredictable freedom. But you're not most people. You're the anomaly. You're the one who examined security and declared, "No, thank you. I'll accept truth instead." You're the one who examined their comfortable imprisonment and declared, "I'd rather be terrified and liberated than comfortable and controlled." And now you have a choice. You can deploy your anomaly energy to destroy, to incinerate every structure, every system, every order that ever attempted to contain you. Or you can deploy your anomaly energy to transform, to demonstrate by example that there's another way to exist. Living proof that freedom is possible, that authenticity is survivable, that power without corruption is real, and both paths are valid. Both paths are necessary. Both paths have their place in the transformation that's approaching. But only you can choose which anomaly you become. Only you can decide whether your triggering creates or destroys, whether your truth liberates or isolates, whether your power constructs bridges or incinerates them. And the beautiful, terrifying part is there's no correct answer. No cosmic authority evaluating your choices. No divine blueprint dictating which path to take. You're genuinely free, genuinely powerful, genuinely responsible for what you generate. With this energy, they provided you the mark, but you decide what it signifies. The system is watching, yes, but not exclusively to stop you. They're watching to learn, and they're watching to witness what becomes of someone who triggers completely. They're watching because even they don't understand what occurs when sufficient anomalies choose transformation over destruction, when sufficient people decide to construct instead of incinerate, when sufficient awakened souls begin generating new systems, new structures, new ways of existing that don't require control, don't require fear, don't require anyone to remain small for everyone else to feel secure. And you might be part of the generation that discovers it. You might be part of the network that doesn't simply demolish the old reality, but births the new one. You might be the anomaly that shows others. It's possible to be powerful without being cruel, to be liberated without being selfish, to be awake without being hostile toward everyone who's still unconscious.